21-bedroom flats.
Until we locked that in, it was like a failure.
More cooperation from the vendor gives everybody what they want.
My first investor came to me on the dentist chair.
So could you just run us through the numbers, the cost of profits? That would be really, really helpful.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
The UK property tour is back, and I'm standing here today with my great business partner, Mark Stokes, and one of our incredible graduates on the Commercial Conversion Academy, Glenn. And we are in Egham, and this is a 10,000 square foot office, and it's being converted into 21 bedroom flats. Mark, these are incredible opportunities. We're really excited to be here.
We absolutely are, and following the system here and creating massive shared value for the investors and for the team, and it's all down to Glenn and his amazing team. So Glenn, you're going to give us a site tour today.
That's it. Welcome to Egham. Welcome to Virginia House. We'll start the tour and we'll take a look around.
Wait. There's one thing I want to share. At the end of this video, we're going to be sharing a golden nugget on how you can be making hundreds of thousands, if not millions of pounds from developments and literally paying the least amount of tax possible. This is going to blow you away, so make sure you stay till the very end.
You see the guys here, they're just doing the groundwork, so we've had to take out and replace new drainage to facilitate the new apartments. The remaining space here in the undercroft will be car parking spaces. Every single flat has a car parking space.
Right.
We're also putting in electric chargers. There's going to be 10 EV chargers in here as well.
I think it's really important when doing a commercial conversion, you know, parking is really an essential part of a development, Mark, because you can include that with the purchase price, or in some cases you can actually sell them additional, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And with the transition to a low carbon economy as well, as Glenn said, electric vehicle charging is essential. You know, fossil fuel powertrains are gradually going to be phased out depending on what the government's strategy is at the time. So 10 EV chargers here, Glenn.
That's right.
Which attract a nice premium as well.
All in all, we've been on site probably about 3 to 4 weeks. You can see here, this used to be the existing wall, which we've now moved back. And as we start to walk through the space, it's been fully stripped out, and we're now starting on the walling, the setting out, and the first fix electrics up on the 3rd floor.
Fantastic. It'll be interesting to know, Glenn, as a commercial conversion specialist now that you are, how have you got this set up? Have you gone out to a main contractor, and how much time are you spending on the site?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I have a JV partner with me who's an ex-builder. We went out to tender to contract for a main contractor, a company called Synergy Construction. We appointed those guys end of November after a tender process, so they're fulfilling the role of the principal contractor, and it's on a full design and build package. So between my JV partner, who's the ex-builder, and the Synergy group, I'm having to spend very little time on site.
In the lift, are you over?
So one of the considerations when we were originally looking at this was, can we keep the stairwell or can we not? We've managed to keep the stairwell in situ. One of the big cost benefits was that having to keep it. Originally, there was some discussion about whether building regs would allow us to keep the existing or have to replace new. So we've managed to keep the existing, which is a big plus. We're keeping the lift, having that refurbed to get that extra premium to the top floor. This is the top floor, and this is the most progressed in terms of the works. So as we start to walk through this space, you'll see we've done a lot of walling out now. The electrics first fix is already going in, so you really get to set a sense of how the apartments will start to take shape.
Well, some people believe is a challenge, Glenn, is actually finding these types of deals. People say there's no deals available. Could you just give some insights into what you did in the early stages to build up a pipeline of deals, and how did you go about finding this deal, and what was that process?
Yeah, sure. Persistency and consistency is the key. I think I analysed over 200 different deals, and until you start getting into the mechanics beyond the numbers, of sort of looking at property and going, how can we evaluate this creatively to make it work? A lot of stuff just didn't stack. You had to go a bit deeper. Make relationships with the vendors, try and understand the common goal, and then get to a price that works for both parties. Until we locked that in, it was like a failure.
Yeah.
Can't find anything, there's nothing on the market. Now, I would say there's lots of opportunities on the market, and it's about just getting the right deal done for the right price.
Relationship capital is actually more important than financial capital in some cases, because people will sell to you also if they know you, like you and trust you. And I think that's really important, is to understand it's about building relationships and also having the determination to go through 200 deal analysis if you need to. You know, you might get lucky and your first deal stacks and great, you get your first deal in 90 days, or it takes a little bit longer, but don't leave before the miracle takes place, and just be willing to go that extra mile. I think a lot of people aren't willing to do that.
We are in property, but we're also in the people business, and getting to understand the vendors at a deeply personal level, find out what great looks like to them. I mean, that's a very simple question, isn't it? What does great look like to you? And quite often it's not just about the money. Of course, it comes down to money at the end of the day, but it could be about life-changing decisions they're making, could be about retirement, moving abroad. And I think you've done that very well about creating those relationships, and fair play to you. And you've created an abundant pipeline now.
And right now, pipeline of deals, how many deals would you say look solid and a potential for getting over the line?
We have 3 solid deals totaling about 43 million in GDV that are in the pipeline for convert.
So not small stuff here. Yeah, obviously Glenn's more experienced. He's done commercial conversion, business owner, has got more confidence than may say some other people coming into this market. But don't always look for the big numbers, just look for numbers that make sense to you. And it's all about risk versus reward, and doing a deal that's going to move your needle and help you become financially independent.
Just watch your step, guys.
I'll tell you what I'm really impressed with is the tidiness of the site. Yeah. Health and safety, the quality, tidiness.
That's thanks to Peter and his team, hiding out a shot there.
Yeah, great. You can see that immediately. So where are we standing now?
So right
we're
now,
on the top floor.
We're on the top floor.
Okay.
Bedroom of plot 2.
Bedroom of plot 2, yeah.
Great.
Third floor.
And third floor, how many apartments on the third floor?
There's 6 apartments on the third, second and first, with 2 on the ground.
Okay, so 6 and a 2, yeah?
They range from minimum space standard, so you're looking at 37 square metres and up to sort of 50, 55 square metres, depending on orientation.
Yeah. So this apartment here, where's the front door for?
Stood right there. Yeah.
About here, yeah.
Yeah, so we've minimised the sort of space in the landings as much as possible to give each apartment as much floor space as possible. A little bit of a trick that we had to use to get the GDV to where we wanted it to be. When we designed the space, we actually went in for planning for 17 apartments and 3 studios. And we've gone in for a minor amendment then to create those studios into apartments afterwards, which has then got to the GDV that we wanted it to. We had to be fairly creative with how we did that with the planning process, our design team, and then subsequently on site with the contractor.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of people wouldn't know how to be creative, and then they walk away from the deal. Yeah. So you were saying earlier, there's actually a lot of opportunity out there once you know what to do and how to do it. That's why advanced training is really important, having the right teams important, having great mentors and that support network to check things over, because one apartment extra can all of a sudden you're good to go, make a difference. Yeah.
And this might be where the vendor comes into it as well. And more cooperation from the vendor gives everybody what they want. More money for the vendor, more money for us. So that collaboration, and that's why we call it creating shared value. Columns are always a challenge, aren't they?
Columns are definitely a challenge, yes. We have to be very creative with the column placement, yeah. There's a plus and a downside to doing conversions. The plus is you've got the core, you've got the structure, it's easy to convert. The downside is you have to accommodate what's there, and that's not always pretty. So you have to be creative about where you put things like structural components that you can't move. The site as a whole, when we found it, one of the reasons we liked it, it was built in 1995, and apart from sort of stripping out, re-walling out and subdividing, there was very little work to do. The windows are all okay, they just need a refurb. Some we need to replace, but the majority of them are actually staying in. So there's a big cost benefit there, added value cost avoidance without having to replace all the windows. Groundworks-wise, I mean, there's minor groundworks. There's a bit of drainage that we had to do just to facilitate the new pipes and everything, but other than that, it was fairly straightforward.
Yes,
I mean, nice job of these.
Yeah, so that's a student accommodation setup there.
Got to be honest, that is nothing like the student accommodation I lived in all those years ago.
Mark, do you want to just give an overview of the difference between development funding, joint venture funding, the parties involved, and then we can come over to Glenn and he can fill us in on how this has been structured and how you've managed to build those relationships and raise the money.
Yeah, so there's many different types of ways of raising the money. Typically we'll work with the banks, and the banks offer a number of products, generally development finance, which means the bank will put in the money for the acquisition of the property, and they'll also then drip feed each month for the build phase of the project. They'll typically fund around about 75 to 80% loan to cost, and so we're then looking at working with mezzanine finance or investors. And Glenn, I think that's the way you've structured this deal, working with the banks and collaborating with private investors.
Yeah, absolutely. We went to a specialist development financier who we used to do, I think it's 65% of the purchase price and 100% of the development costs, and then the gap, we filled that through a private network of investors, and that was all done on loan notes via debt. So the financial stack was all very much debt. There's no equity in our SPV at all.
How did you go and find that investor? What's the, if someone's watching this now and they've never raised money and they're a bit nervous, what would you say is a great starting point? How can they go and raise money, and how did you find that network of money?
Just talk about what you do with passion. And my first investor came to me on the dentist chair. I was sat there having my checkup, and it was during the pandemic. They're like, "So what are you doing? How have you been? Have you managed to get through the pandemic?" And it's there with my mouth open, her fingers in my mouth. I was like, "I'm doing this thing," and she's like, "Oh really? Oh, we really want to do that." Oh, well, and after that we met and had a coffee, and she put £600,000 into a deal. So they can come from anywhere. I usually spend my time having coffees, meeting people, talking about what I do. And you'll find that the investment comes from the strangest of places. I have to say that out of all the investors that I'm working with, I haven't gone to any of them and asked them for money. They've all come to me after we've had a conversation about something and said, "I'd be interested in working with you because I believe in what you're doing. I buy into you, your ethos, your values." So I think it's important to establish rapport.
So key is get into the dentist chair, right? So if you've been avoiding that, do it. But you know what? It's so true, because you don't know who you're talking to, and if you're just yourself and you love what you do and you're just chatting away, people out there have got money. They're not making the return in the bank. They don't have the expertise to go into crypto or maybe go and put that into a new business. They've reached a point in their life where they just want to deploy capital into something relatively safe and secure and sit back and reap the rewards of their, or their fruits, I suppose.
When you've got clarity in your story, clarity in your passion, that's what people buy into. And the question I get asked a lot is, but Mark, I haven't got a property yet. This all starts before the property. If you've got clarity of a vision, story, purpose, mission, values, you know where you're going, people buy into that, they lock into that. And then you've got a waiting list for when the first property comes along, and then the second and the third. So to me, it's about locking in your vision, your story, and going from there.
So this is what the floor looks like before we wall out. You can see here that we have literally just a box with some structural work in that we had to work around. The mission was to try and retain as much as possible. Instead of just coming in, stripping everything out, rescreeding, we wanted to try and retain as much of the structure as we could. When we were looking at this, we've got sort of 3 different routes of exit. And then what we're looking to do is try and sell the block as a whole to an investor, as an off-market investment at a slight discount. If we fail to do that by the end of March, we'll then list with our preferred agent and we'll start selling to the open market. We have 2 suites that are going to be ready, sort of test suites, test apartments, show apartments that'll be ready at the end of April. We're having some CGIs done, so we'll start then to sell off, pre-development completion. We'll start to sell some units for the market, and then we've given ourselves 3 months post-completion to hopefully sell the remainder. So
it comes down to knowing the avatar. What is the specification you're designing for? Is this for student accommodation? Is it first-time buyers? Is it supported living, social housing? And any of those are relevant. So, I mean, there are at least 10 different types of commercial conversion strategy that you can adopt. But of course, the bank want to know that you're very much focused on one singular option. So don't be sharing with the bank that you've got 5 different exit options and thinking that's going to go down well. It won't. They want absolute clarity. And in Glenn's case here, buy, develop, sell, very clear. but also mindful of the economy as well. What I typically see is for the first, maybe the second deal, people are buy, develop and selling. They're creating that war chest, and then possibly on their third deal onwards, they're starting to retain all the units or some of them. So there tends to be a step strategy, and it's all part of that 1, 3, 5 year growth plan.
Great, good stuff. Well, I think let's go downstairs, let's go outside, and let's summarise with the numbers from top to bottom. This is great. So could you just run us through the numbers, from purchase price to GDV to cost of profits? That would be really, really helpful.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So we acquired the site all in with legal fees for £2 million. We have spent, we're going to be spending £1.6 million on the construction cost, including all of the professional fees, and that will give us currently at 5.4 million GDV. So you take those costs away and we're left with about 1 million net profit.
Wow, £1 million, one property transaction, first ever commercial to residential deal, using joint venture funding. What would £1 million do for you and your loved ones right now? Perhaps that's the one and done deal and you're set up for life. Maybe you're like Glenn and you're just going to be hungry for doing even more and more of these. And perhaps your first deal's not £1 million, but what if it was £500,000? What if it was 200,000? Where else can you go and make that type of money here in the UK? Income follows assets, and the UK is in demand for affordable housing. Now, I said earlier on that we were going to share a golden nugget with you on how you can massively reduce your taxes. Over to Mr. Mark Stokes.
Yeah, so imagine making £1 million, like this development here, £1 million of profit. But of course, in traditional tax circumstances, you're going to be paying hundreds of thousands of pounds in tax. You structure the asset correctly right from the start so that you get tax-free earnings right at the end of the development. Now, there are many different ways of doing that. You can use your SAS pension as an example to make those contributions in there by having the right shareholders and structure in your limited company. You can do that. So many different ways, but that's the beauty of commercial conversions. You tailor it to suit your personal circumstances. We want to make the high profits, the big money, but we want to make sure it's highly tax efficient.
Glenn, final words. What would you like to say to anyone listening to this that maybe is brand new or they've done a few deals and they've got some blocks and barriers right now? What would be your words of wisdom and what would be your advice?
Talk it through with as many people as you can to keep the support and your enthusiasm going. It's a hard journey. It's not for the faint-hearted, but it's very rewarding. As a specialist working on your own, it can be very, very, very hard to keep the momentum. You have to be persistent and consistent, and those rewards do pay off in time. So keeping a good positive mindset is critical, and surrounding yourself with good mentorship, good education is a must.
Well, it's been absolutely fantastic. Appreciate you letting us come down on site. Hopefully this is one journey of many. I think we should do a part 2, if that's okay, Glenn, later in the year.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks for tuning in. Mark, final words?
Yeah, just amazing, life-changing. Thank you so much for Glenn, amazing, and looking forward to seeing your journey.
Very good.
Great.